Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And today, of course, today was a really big day for motorsport in 2024 because we have the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500, as well as Formula E, British Touring Cars, Formula Regional European, DTM, Euro Formula, God knows what else. There's a lot of racing this weekend. And so we start the festivities with the Monaco Grand Prix. And it was kind of a sad one to watch because clearly one of the big things on the agenda or on the minds of a lot of people in Formula One is getting rid of Monaco. I know a lot of people have said they need to make changes to the track. They really can't. There is not enough space to make any kind of big changes to the Monaco track. It is surrounded on all sides by buildings. You aren't going to be able to extend it any. It really is kind of stuck as it is. It's a shame that they talk about changing the track and not changing the cars, which I think are the problem, because we saw in Formula 3, you can overtake at Monaco. And I think it helps that those cars aren't quite as wide as a Formula 1 car. There's the issue, make the cars less wide. This was a track designed for cars in the 1920s, which were obviously a lot narrower. Cars are a lot wider now, and yes, Monaco's probably not up to modern standards. It does not create great racing, especially for Formula 1, although as we've seen from Formula E, you can have good races here. So it's not an issue of the track. The track is fine. We had the Historics racing around here a couple of weeks ago. It was a fantastic weekend. It was very exciting to see those cars out there. So the issue is the cars. There's something wrong with the design of Formula 1 cars. They're probably designed to be exceptionally quick and almost perfect on a wide modern circuit in the Middle East. Not in any way designed to be entertaining to watch. That might be a big problem Formula 1 really wants to look at. Might not be Monaco that's the issue. You may have made a slight design flaw in terms of just not being able to create exciting racing anymore. Although this one did start out messy with obviously Perez having a massive crash with Magnussen and Hulkenberg. I'm glad he's okay. It's been a bad weekend for Sergio Perez. I keep talking about him being replaced. I can still see it happening at some point. And the race incident was not his fault, but the fact that he was there due to a poor qualifying performance definitely was. I think things are starting to stack up against Sergio Perez. Magnussen as well. This was not a good look for him considering he had a really bad weekend a few weeks ago and he has a whole ton of penalty points. It was his fault. I'm surprised he's probably going to get away with it by the sounds of it. So he's very lucky, but he must be walking on a tightrope. And honestly, if he gets banned for a race and Oliver Behrman comes in, that could be Kevin Magnussen signing his own death warrant. Because if Ollie Behrman does well in the Haas, I don't think they'll think twice about replacing Magnussen, who has not been performing very well. And also on the first lap, we had Ocon making contact with Gasly after a bit of a dodgy move, which he got chewed out for. And again, Ocon is probably one of those drivers in a dangerous position where it's not a big loss for Alpine to replace him. And Alpine have a lot of very good junior drivers, Jack Doohan being one of them. You also have the likes of Gabriel Mini in Formula 3. Victor Martins, although he's not having a great year, he is still a good driver. If they chose, I don't think it'd be a great idea to replace him right now, but it's not out of the question. Ocon needs to be careful, and making mistakes like that, definitely not on the cards. After that, the race was pretty dull because you just can't overtake. There was no real overtakes for a long portion of this race. The front four stayed the front four for the entire race due to the fact they changed tyres on the red flag. In fact, I'm not sure any of the top 10 changed at any time, which is pretty bad. Maybe it is time to get Monaco off the calendar, because if this is the direction we're going, we've got more tracks in the Middle East to add on. We're going to have a calendar full of like 30 races at some point, and Monaco's not going to have a place on it because it's old-fashioned and Formula 1 just doesn't really work there now. Hopefully they would keep the Monaco track alive, at least for the historic weekend, and have Formula E race there, maybe some of the junior formulas, bring back the Monaco Junior Cup, whatever it was called. It needs to survive because I think as a historic monument to motorsport, it's one of the most fantastic tracks out there. I honestly would hate to see it go from the calendar, but I can understand why. I just hate what it's being replaced with, what all the great European tracks are being replaced with. There will be a time when Formula 1 won't go to places like Spa or Silverstone or Monza because those tracks will just become old-fashioned, old world, and that's not what Formula 1 wants. It wants 10 races in America, it wants a whole bunch in the Middle East, it wants probably as soon as it can to have another Russian Grand Prix. It wants the big money Grand Prix, the countries willing to pay to have these Grand Prix. Usually on really boring racetracks. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Yas Marinas, Bahrain, Sochi at Russia was always a boring race, usually, unless Daniel Kvyat was racing. These big money tracks, massive stadiums with wide tracks, loads of runoff, they tend to be really dull. Has there ever been a really great Bahrain Grand Prix? Will we ever see a really good race in Qatar? Is Yas Marinas anything other than incredibly tedious to drive around? Or to watch people drive around? I don't know what it's like to drive around. I'm sure it's very nice. It's probably very smooth and you have lots of places to go off. But to watch, it's dull as dishwater, being polite. It irks me. I honestly think the calendar is moving in the wrong direction. I'm not saying you have to have 100 races at just European circuits, but the fact you don't have a French Grand Prix or a German Grand Prix, these are two incredibly historic countries for motorsport, and it's just not financially viable to race there, or if it is, then it's just even more profitable to race in places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar. That is cynical. It's a really disappointing way to look at Formula 1 right now, but it has become about more than just money. It's a whole load of money, big numbers, probably 7-8 digit numbers. As for the race itself, as I said, not a lot happened. Charles Leclerc taking his first Monaco win in his home principality. Very happy for him. It's his first win since Austria in 2022, so he's had a very long wait. It's almost as long as Lewis Hamilton's. So it's good that he's finally turned that around. And it leaves championship open a little bit. It's not all going Verstappen's way. He was sick from this race. He looked off the pace. Red Bull definitely struggled here. Leclerc has finished in the top 4 at every race this year. He is in fantastic form. Going to be difficult to keep that up for a whole year, but he is doing very, very well. Sainz isn't doing half bad either. Norris obviously doing a fantastic job at the moment. They're not a million miles behind Verstappen. If the rest of this year does not go Verstappen's way, or he has a few more instances of bad luck, we could have a championship fight on our hands. I think Verstappen is obviously still the favourite, but I wouldn't count Leclerc and Norris out completely. As for other drivers, I won't go through everyone in this race because it's kind of pointless. Tsunoda was fantastic again, another points finish in the RB. Miles off the front teams, but that's nothing to be ashamed of. Aston Martin, nowhere again. Points for Williams as well. Alex Albon scored points, so good for him. Pierre Gasly got his first points of the year. Mercedes were there. It was competent. Russell 5th, Hamilton 7th. They didn't do anything too surprising. And then it's kind of just the usual bunch out of the points to Stakes, Ricciardo, Sargent, whoever else. It was a pretty mediocre race. I love Monaco. I love the history of Monaco. Maybe it is time to say goodbye to the Grand Prix at Monaco. But as long as we have some form of racing there, it won't be gone for long. Honestly, it's an incredible track. It's up there with Macau. Honestly, the Macau Grand Prix, it's another track where it's insanely difficult to overtake. But the racing there is just so compelling that it's, honestly, if you don't watch the Macau Grand Prix, I don't know how to help you. Because it's usually free on everything, and the racing at Macau is usually amazing. And you know what? Monaco is Monaco. I love it. I'm happy it exists. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Monaco Grand Prix has a future? I'm sure we discussed this last year. What did you think of the race? Charles Leclerc's title hopes? Everything, anything you want to discuss, leave in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching and have a good one. And enjoy the Indy 500 as well.